The old Baxter estate had been abandoned for decades, standing alone on the edge of a decaying forest. Legend claimed that anyone who spent the night in the house would never be seen again. It wasn't superstition, but an unspoken truth that kept the townsfolk away. For Lila, an amateur ghost hunter, it was the perfect opportunity to boost her channel's views. She arrived at dusk, armed with cameras, flashlights, and bravado. The house loomed like a corpse, blackened wood, shattered windows, and a door that hung slightly ajar. She stepped inside and was greeted by silence so thick it seemed alive. Every room felt wrong, but one in particular drew her in, a bedroom at the end of a long, narrow hallway. The air was suffocating. The walls were cracked and discolored, with a dark stain spreading from the ceiling to the floor. Lila set up her camera, trying to ignore the sense of being watched. At midnight, the house began to breathe. Soft, almost imperceptible whispers filled the room, growing louder until they turned into groans. Lila's flashlight flickered, and the air grew icy. She spun around as the door slammed shut on its own. The stain on the wall began to expand, oozing a dark, viscous liquid. Blood. It dripped slowly at first, then in torrents, pooling on the floor. Lila backed into a corner, trembling. She reached for the door, but it wouldn't budge. A deep, guttural voice filled the room. It demanded to know why she had come here. Lila screamed, but the voice continued, its tone mocking. The blood on the walls began to pulse, taking on the shapes of faces. Twisted, screaming faces. Their mouths moved, but the screams weren't theirs. They came from inside Lila's own head. She clawed at her ears, desperate to block out the noise. The floor began to soften, and hands emerged from the blood, clawing at her ankles. She fought to free herself, but the hands were relentless, pulling her down inch by inch. Her screams echoed, swallowed by the house. The last thing she saw was her reflection in the blood. Her face was not her own. It was twisted, mutilated, her eyes hollow and her mouth stretched in an eternal scream. Days later, the camera was found outside the house, footage intact. It showed Lila entering the bedroom and setting up her equipment. Then, the screen flickered and her terrified face appeared. "I was wrong," she whispered into the lens. "It's not haunted. It's alive." The video ended with the sound of her screams and the sight of her being dragged into the blood-drenched floor. No one dared enter the Baxter estate again, but the stain on the walls grew larger, feeding on the fear of those who dared to look too long.